Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Food, Wine, and Whiskey. I am your host, Rob, and Carter, co-host Carter back. How you doing, buddy?
Hey man, I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. I'm going to have a fun conversation. We haven't really kind of dove into the bourbon world. I think it's been a little while since we've had some content on bourbon. I think the last one we did may have been kind of where we are in the bourbon game right now. If you haven't heard that episode, definitely go back and check it out. But I'm looking forward to having this conversation today.
Yeah, no doubt. And there may be a little bit of overlap in that episode, but I think we're going to get a little bit deeper this time.
I think so too. I do want to start by thanking everybody who listens and supports the podcast. We really appreciate that. If you can subscribe anywhere you listen, we're downloaded Apple, Google, Spotify, Stitcher, any of those. Leaving a review is huge. It gets us up in whatever platform, Apple or Google, that you're listening to, and kind of gets the word out that we're here and we're talking and we're having some fun. So if you could, leave a review and at least a like, we really appreciate that, and it really does help the show. So you and I talking about this episode, we were struggling, we still are struggling, and obviously if you've seen the title, we came to a decision. But how to title this episode? I mean, we kind of had underappreciated bourbons, bourbon you should love, bourbons that sit on the shelf, don't chase allocated. I mean, there's all kinds of ways we were going with this.
Yeah, different ways to kind of phrase it, but I think it's just the stuff that, I'll just go right out and say it, Rob. I mean, the stuff that I buy now. Like I don't really chase stuff anymore. I know that like every kind of bourbon nerd says that. Oh, I don't chase anything, or whatever.
Then you drive by the liquor store and he's in line.
Yeah, no, but like seriously, I don't chase anything anymore. Like I just go buy the stuff that I like. And this is an episode of me, of probably both of us, the stuff we go and buy, and when we finish off a bottle, we go buy another bottle.
Yeah, this is this is kind of a broad kind of topic for us, because we're going to cover a lot of little, dynamics of everything that kind of piled up kind of gets us to where we are right now. And what I mean by that is, talking a little bit about the bourbon craze. It's still going strong. I mean, a couple of things, Matt, that jumps out at me is just the price of allocated bourbon. First of all, when you get into bourbon, that's kind of the goal, right? You usually get into some kind of group, or you meet some friends who have some cool bottles. So ultimately you go, I want cool bottles too. And rightfully so. I was there at one point. But the price, 6-7 years ago for some of those bottles were still what you might call a little bit expensive, but they weren't crazy. And Matt, one that comes to mind for me is like Midwinter's Night Dram. I mean, it went from being like an $80 bottle a few years ago, and now it's $150 a bottle.
Is that retail?
Retail.
Oh my gosh, you're kidding.
No, and Booker's another one. Used to be like $65. Now it's like $110 for Booker's.
Oh my God. Okay. So I remember when Midwinter's Night Dram, and it wasn't that long ago, that bottle on secondary went for like on $190, $200.
Right. Think about what it goes for now.
Oh my gosh. That's crazy. I didn't even know that was the retail price. Again, this is where I am on my bourbon journey, as we have discussed. Like, I know I'm not going to find that bottle, so I don't even know what it goes for.
Yeah, and we don't look for it where we are in our journey. We don't look for it. But the point I'm making is it's gotten ridiculously expensive for some of these things. And some people might go, well, screw the distillers for doing that. Why? I mean, we're in a capitalist market. I mean, if they're going to say, hey, data tells us we can put this price point on it and people will pay for it, they're right. I mean, look at Single Rickhouse getting released from Wild Turkey. You remember the price tag on that one?
Oh, it was $250 retail or something?
$250 retail for just a bottle of whiskey. Because it says Single Rickhouse.
Wild to me. I mean, because that's approaching the Scotch world. Like when I see like something that's $250, I'm thinking to myself, oh my gosh, like I can go get like a Balvenie, 30 or something, or 25 or something like that for that kind of money. and then you start thinking like, is that Wild Turkey that's 8 years as good as the Balvenie 25? I don't know.
You know what? You just made a great point, though. I think that's a little PSA. If you get to that number for a bourbon, you probably ought to start looking at some of those scotches, because we've had the Balvenie 30, and it's freaking phenomenal. And I'd rather spend my money there. I also have the single Rick House, and it's not a bad bourbon, but it's more like a $60 bourbon, not a $250 bourbon.
I mean, and I might be wrong, completely wrong on the Scotch price, but I'm pretty sure you can find a pretty damn good bottle of Scotch for like $250. Like that's in the neighborhood of like not the elite of the elite Scotches, but it's up there.
It absolutely is. And some people might go, well, I'm not a Scotch fan. And so we have solutions for you there. If you're into both beverages, then Scott might be an alternative when you get to a certain point. But if you say, hey, look, I don't drink Scotch, I don't like Scotch. A lot of bourbon drinkers have that kind of mindset, and I think at some point in their journey, they're going to start to like and appreciate and enjoy Scotch. But, we'll give them time, Carter. We'll give them a little time.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, then, you think about the Irish, I think some of these, like older age redbreasts and stuff they're just phenomenal.
Sure.
So, that's another thing you could probably, for $250, you could get something really damn good.
But we want to make sure people we're talking bourbon today. So we want to give you some solutions for bourbon. Instead of paying, instead of paying these, what could be ridiculous pricing retail now, or even on secondary trying to find things. And Carter, if we talk a little bit about, what's the journey? How would you describe your journey in bourbon? What was your process? I'm sure it's very similar to mine. How did it go?
I guess I just started, getting into the groups, watching some YouTubes, listening to some stuff, and then I started buying some on the shelf kind of solid, bourbons that I hear about. Then I started chasing stuff, allocated stuff. And then, I got into the proofy stuff, and then, I probably started kind of coming back down to earth when
you left out a tier.
Oh, did I?
Secondary.
Oh, well, secondary.
You got into secondary.
I did get into secondary. I'll tell you, I will. This is something, if there is a bottle that I really want, I'm not condoning anybody, buy from secondary or anything like that. But I was I was probably buying a little too much from secondary at one point in time. But what I could say is, if there's a bottle that you really, really want, just think about your time. If it's something that's just man, I gotta try this. Secondary is not a horrible place for some things. So, it's up.
Here's my opinion on secondary. If you're going to buy a bottle there, to your point, it needs to be like this celebratory bottle. It's something for you're getting married, or your son or daughter's getting married, or an anniversary, or something special. Or the other thing I think secondary's okay for is dusties, more so than anything else, because you can't find any of that, just around the area. You can't go hunt for a dusty. If you're going to find one, it's got to be online somewhere.
Yeah, pretty much, unless you're living in Asia or something.
Yeah.
Maybe some of that's still on the shelf. But yeah, I think that's just secondary has its place. I think if you've always wanted, your whole existence has been I want to have a Pappy Van Winkle something or other, you can find it regularly on secondary.
That ought to tell you something too.
Go for it.
Well, if it's that readily available, why is everybody selling it? If it were that good, if it's fantastic, King of Kentucky, you don't see on there all the time.
No, it's way more rare.
Exactly.
But I think, if you're gonna really talk about Pappy Van Winkle, is it worth the secondary price? Hell no.
That's my point. Go try that before you drop, depending on which one you're going after, $1,000 to $4,000 on a bottle of Pappy. Go try it at a bar. Spend the $50 or $100 before you spend $4,000 or $3,000 or $2,000.
Oh yeah. I mean, I don't think it's worth the secondary value, but if you absolutely want one, I mean, the likelihood of you winning a lottery or like you going out and finding one on the shelf is just not going to be there.
No.
I'm sorry. Unless you buy, $20,000 from Specs a year or something like that, you're not going to have access to it.
Yeah. So today's episode, we're talking about how crazy, part of the conversation is how crazy the bourbon world has gotten and still is. It's to me, the trajectory is still going up, Carter. I think the bourbon distillers are going to run into an issue of having product at some point, because I see more and more young people or people who have been drinkers for a while of other, beverages, all of a sudden going, hey, I'm getting into bourbon. I mean, there's still a ton of people getting into the sweet nectar of bourbon.
Well, I mean, I love bourbon. I mean, I'm a fan, and I will also go out and say, as much as I love bourbon, I have become less and less enamored with chasing and collecting and things like that. Bourbon, mostly because I'm a little burnt out on it. To be honest.
I really think the, quality to price ratio, there's this law of diminishing returns, right? And is a 15-year Pappy Van Winkle $2,500 better than a 15-year, what's the one you brought over, the 14, 15, 16 that we drank?
Oh, the Calumet, yeah.
That was fantastic, dude.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's $125 a bottle. If you ask me, what would you rather spend? I'll spend the $125 and put that other $2,400 to something else.
Yeah. And even those have gone up in price. I think the most recent release was $150 maybe.
See, that's just getting crazy.
But I guess from that particular perspective, if you're talking about a 16-year old bourbon, that's a long time. I think Pappy Van Winkle retail, the 15 is like at least 150, if not 200.
I think it's 179.
Okay.
Yeah. So, and you bring up a very good point. We're talking secondary. Now, the bottle we just mentioned, the Calumet, it's not being chased after on second. It's on shelves. You can go find the 1450. But I will give Buffalo Trace credit. They release their bourbons. They're not releasing them at the price. Again, we're talking secondary. They're pretty good on their retail pricing. I really don't have an issue with any of their retail pricing on any of their products. The problem is, it's very hard to find most of their products at retail. You're just not going to find them.
Yeah, you just don't. And to that point, right? I mean, even if you look at I will give Buffalo Trace the credit. They don't increase their prices much compared to what they could charge. I'd say, for instance, like Jim Beam, you've got Knob Creek. I mean, they had those 15-year picks that were out, and those were in tremendous value and everything.
$55.
Yeah, the great value, wonderful bourbons, and then they figured it out. They said, you know what, we're going to slap a 15-year label on one of ours, and then we're going to charge a lot more for it.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't blame them for that, but
again, it gets back to the supply and demand, right? People want it; they're willing to pay for it. I mean, any business would be a fool. The market dictates what a product's worth. Nothing else. The market does. And
if you're getting pissed at bourbon, just go. Why don't you go? Talk to somebody going to a grocery store.
Buy a dozen eggs.
Yeah, I mean, it's like ridiculous out there. I'll give you an example. I mean, I went to the grocery store on Friday, and I didn't even buy that much stuff. I mean, really didn't buy that much. I was going to be grilling out this weekend, and got some burgers, got a few things that I wanted to get, and walked out of there $200 later. It's just like what's going on here?
I laugh sometimes because I'll go to the grocery store now and have I'll be in the line that's 15 items or less, and I'm like, oh yeah, I don't have very much. And then it's like $87. I'm like, how the hell is that $87 for? I've got less than 15 items there.
Yeah, I know, it's just nuts. But anyway, I guess I do want to say this. I don't think
the prices going up, is there a part of it that could be, because of inflation and the cost of, or the difficulty in getting glass or whatever it might be? Is there other parts of the distilling process? Maybe. But the only reason I don't put too much on the inflation for bourbon is because most of this shit's been in the barrel for 7 years. Their cost, they all own their warehouses, rick houses. Those costs shouldn't hit for another few more years because, unless they're, so I just think it's more the bourbon craze that's driving the cost up, that they're looking at the market going, the consumers are willing to pay whatever. And they're right. The single rick house from Wild Turkey at $250 is proof of that.
Oh, it's crazy. And you know what? You never see one on the shelf either.
No.
Somebody would just immediately buy that bottle.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. So we're just kind of going, like I said at the beginning, there's a lot going on in our thoughts on this particular episode. It's just kind of where bourbon is and kind of how crazy it is looking for all this, I don't want to say silly stuff. It's good stuff. If you walked in a store and it's on the shelf, by all means buy it. If somebody calls you and offers it to you, by all means buy it. Our whole thing is you don't need to spend, to your point earlier, Carter, all this time trying to chase these bottles of bourbon, all these different allocated things. And, we totally get that when you get into bourbon, you go through those steps. I did, man. I was out looking for everything. But at some point, one, you're going to have a shit ton of bourbon at your house that you need to drink, right?
Yeah, right.
And two, there's just so many good bourbons on the shelf that just are there every time you go to a liquor store. They're there. They're available. And that kind of gets into what we want to talk about today. Bourbons you should love, underappreciated bourbons that are readily available. Just try them if you haven't. And if you have, you know what we're talking about. You're shaking your head yes, going, these guys get it. This is good juice. And it's a long list, Carter. I've got a long list here.
Oh, yeah, sure. And I'll tell you one of the things that I get asked the most is not I get asked from friends of mine that are kind of into the whiskey thing, but not necessarily all into the whiskey thing. The thing that I get asked the most is, hey, what's a bottle on the shelf that I can buy that's going to be really, really good?
Yeah.
One of the number one questions that I ask, not like, hey, what are the allocated things that you're chasing? Hey, is this good? All that kind of stuff. Well, give me a few suggestions.
Yeah, absolutely. And I get those kind of questions as well. I would say typically when I get that call, it's somebody going, I'm taking this to a friend of mine who is into bourbon a little bit, and it's a gift for a birthday or whatever. What would you recommend I could go to the store and get? And there's bottles under $75 that you could get that are great gifts that I don't care what level bourbon drinker you are, that guy or gal is going to enjoy that bottle.
Yep. Completely agree.
And I always tell people, Carter, even if they already have this bottle, they'll appreciate having a backup.
Absolutely. I mean, okay. Yeah, humble brag. I do have a whiskey room in my house. And I will say this, there are bottles that I keep, even if they're empty, I keep them on my whiskey shelf to remind myself to get another bottle of it.
Yeah,
because
absolutely.
they literally have a permanent place on that whiskey shelf.
And you don't want to forget about them. Out of sight, out of mind, right? So you got to keep it in front of you. I agree.
So right now I've got an empty bottle of, and I guess maybe we're getting into it now, but I've got an empty bottle of Baker's over 8-year single barrel sitting there, and I just need to go get another bottle.
Well, that'll be the first one you can throw out. Baker's, I'm going to say that's available, but I wouldn't say that's one that's on the shelf every time you go.
Yeah, it's a little bit more hit or miss, and particularly the 8-year picks.
Yeah, 8-year particularly, but also just the Baker's kind of, I think it's kind of batch released, maybe 4 or 5 times a year. I don't know that it's released, on a consistent basis, maybe, just because it's like I don't see it for a month or two, and then all of a sudden it's on the shelf for the next 2 months, and then I don't see it for a month or two, and then it's back on the shelf for a couple months. So I just think that probably has something to do with how they're distributing that particular product.
it's one of those that if you look hard enough, you're going to find it. You will eventually run into that.
Totally agree. I think that's one, if you just, and you don't even have to hunt it, just put it on your list that when I go, I'm just going to look for it. And when I see it, I'll buy it. And eventually you will see it. But get into the 8-year. Why, let's talk. People are going, wait, well, hold on a second. What do you mean 8-year? This is Baker 7. It's a 7-year-old product.
Yeah, so it's 7-year minimum, and they're all single barrels now. So the 8-year is kind of, well, at least Rob and I've we've just done a little testing, our own little hypothesis, but that's the sweet spot. It tastes just a little bit better at 8 years. Anything over that 8-year mark
is a hit. Every time it's been a hit.
Yeah.
And the sample size for this conclusion is not small. We've went through quite a few of those over the last few years to kind of, really believe that this is the case. The 7 years not awful, but it's nowhere near the 8-year. That extra time in barrel, it just really does something to the bourbon that just makes it delicious.
It does. And I will say this, this is not to me, this is not a value necessarily bourbon, because the retail price, I'm looking at it right now on my phone.
Let me guess now. Let me guess.
Go ahead.
So this I used to be able to get these for about 45, but I think they're 65 to 70 now.
Total Wine has it at $60.99.
60. Okay. That's not too bad. Used to be $45.
And this is in the local Houston area. My app is set to Houston. I'm sure there's some variation between market to market, but for this area, it's $61.
Wow. Well, let's do this. Let's shift and let's start talking about some bourbons that no matter, as long as they have a bourbon section, you're going to find multiples of what we're about to talk about on the shelf. I mean, if not all of these, 2/3 or again, most of them are going to be available to you. And there's so many good ones. Carter, I went through and was making this list and just started writing down things that I really enjoy that, one, aren't expensive, and two, aren't hard to find. And I'm like, I'm probably 22, 25 bourbons deep. And I'm going, man, there's a lot of quality, inexpensive bourbon and rye available.
Yeah, I think that you could build out a whiskey room pretty easily with just this on the shelf offerings.
Yeah,
good quality things.
Several years ago, you and I did an episode. I think we did it with a couple of friends, building a bar for $500. Kind of how you would build that bar. We may have to revisit that. How would you? I'd be curious how we go back and listen to that episode. How we built the bar back then, versus how would we build it today?
I had that. I have mine. I generally, for our show notes, I save them on my phone, and I still have those notes. So it'd be interesting to compare that.
Yeah, that would be a lot of fun. Well, let's start. Rattle off 2 or 3, and I'll check them off my list because I know they're going to be on my list too. That just start us off. What do you think are bottles that you would recommend to the bourbon listeners to just, if you're looking for something that's just high quality, good value, consistently on the shelf, fire away.
Yeah, so I'm going to kind of start at the low price point end and kind of build up from there. So just a couple that I'm thinking right now. Old Granddad Bonded, Old Granddad 114. If you're just getting into bourbon and you want something that's sub $20, the Evan Williams Bottled and Bond is pretty darn good.
And it's the Evan Williams. Yeah, that's $14. That's absolutely tremendous for that price.
For that price, it's really pretty darn good. So those are just 3 that just kind of some of the around 20 or under 20 that I can think of just right off the bat.
Yeah, and I will touch on those just a little bit. You heard me say the Evan Williams, just fantastic. But I do also want to say that Old Granddad Bottled and Bond is really, really good, but 114 could be in contention for one of the biggest bang for your buck bourbons.
It's awesome.
Yeah, It's tremendous value at 114 proof. The quality of that particular bourbon is just tremendous.
Oh yeah, I people keep throwing out these like rumors that it's going to be allocated one day or something. I mean, I'm like, I don't know about that.
Here's the funny thing about that particular bourbon. When I go to most bourbon shops, and not even liquor stores or box stores, whatever, that have a bourbon section, that typically is, if not on the bottom shelf, it's like one shelf up. So it's not it's not put in a spot in the store where it's signaling to the buyer, the consumer, that this is a quality product. It's down at the bottom, which, people go bottom shelf. It can't be that good. And I think that's part of the problem.
There is a misnomer there, I will say, because that Evan Williams is generally on the very bottom shelf. So
yeah,
I mean, there, you can get some quality down there. So just listen up here. We're gonna help you here.
I do want to kind of piggyback off your Evan Williams pick and throw out a couple. I'm going to start with the Evan Williams single barrel. I don't know if you've ever had that. It's like $32.
Yep, that one's really good.
86 proof, but it's freaking phenomenal. I mean, the flavor in
it punches up, though. I really like that one.
Totally agree. I think it punches way above its weight class. It really does. So since you mentioned the Bottled in Bond, I thought I'd throw that one out there.
Sure.
I'm going to go with a couple that I just love that I consistently will have and drink. Wild Turkey 101. College kids drink it for effect. They mix with it, and it's great for a mixer. But drinking this on its own, understanding that this is, 6-year, 8-year, and 12-year whiskey blended in this still for $25, sometimes sub $25, you can't beat it. It's just a tremendous value, a quality product. And then the last one I'm going to throw out for you is one of my favorites. I'm going to jump to the wheated type of bourbon now and go Maker's Mark Cask Strength.
Oh yeah. Well, yeah, that is $42 now. It used to be sub 40.
I still see it for about 35, 38.
Do you really?
Yeah, I do.
Okay. Well, if you can find it there, you're definitely winning. And it honestly, even at 40, like 40, just over 40, it's great bourbon. Fantastic.
Yeah.
Like,
again,
you're not going to be disappointed
like
with that.
8-year-old bourbon, 7-8-year-old bourbon, and it's 110 proof, cask strength, wheated. And I just think it might be, Carter, for me, the one bourbon that should get way more love than it does. I mean, it's way underappreciated, if you ask my honest opinion.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I feel like we're kind of doing a disservice to ourselves because every time we do one of these shows, like we mention this product and somebody's going to catch on, and maybe enough people are going to catch on to where we're like kicking ourselves. But I don't know. We did go to, we have both been to Maker's Mark, and we've seen how many barrels they have up there. I feel like they've got a good stockpile.
They do. And one thing I'll note about them is I like that they rotate barrels. You go to some rig houses.
Yeah, they're one of the few.
Yeah, so all the barrels at some point going to be in what would be considered the sweet spot, right?
Right. You're going to, yes. Well, yeah, they're going to spend some time on the I don't know, the crow's nest area, up at the top, and then they're going to spend some time at the bottom. I mean, there you go.
So give me a couple more that you can think of that you have on your list that are just bangers for the price, quality to price.
I will say this is still in there, but the price has gone up, and that's a Wild Turkey Rare Breed. Though I will say this: the price has increased on that product. It used to be a little bit more of a sleeper than it is now, but still a quality product. I'd say the Whiskey Row series of the Old Forester. We're getting into higher prices here.
I thought you were building up to the pricey ones. You're jumping there now.
Okay. Let me take a step back. I'll say Buffalo Trace. If like around in our market, we can find Buffalo Trace anywhere. I think it's worth the $25 or $26 that it is on the shelf.
And we understand if you're not in Texas, you may not have that on the shelf. I for that reason, I didn't put it on my list, but there are other markets. We're not the only market that it just sits on the shelf, so I'm sure it's out there somewhere. But yeah, you're exactly right. And if you can find a pick of it, it's even better.
Oh yeah, for sure. But I'd say Evan Will, Elijah Craig, just the regular old 94 proof that sits on the shelf is really darn good.
Absolutely,
and you can find it anywhere.
Always on the shelf, always there, and just consistent. I mean, it's just consistently good.
I'd also
go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
Knob Creek 9-year.
Okay.
100 proof.
I'm marking these off my list.
I feel like that is one of the best bottles out there that you can get that pretty much sits on the shelf everywhere.
Okay. Cool. I'm going to go Early Times Bottled in Bond. It's a big hitter, very popular, $22, and this is a liter. This isn't $7.50, so you're getting a liter. So your value on this one is kicked up a notch because you're getting 250 more milliliters for that $22 than what most bottles are in that price range at $7.50.
I think we're still going to be drinking the Old Forester, the Brown Forman stuff for a couple years more, but eventually it's going to be moving to Sazerac, right?
It is. The other one I'm going to throw out that I think this is always on the shelf, and at least it is here. I think it's distributed everywhere. It's out of Tennessee. It's Chattanooga. And I'm talking about the 111 proof. They have is it 86 or 90 proof? They have a lower proofed one. The price difference isn't that much, so my suggestion would be buy the 111 proof, but this is a quality, really good whiskey.
Oh yeah. I'm a big fan. I'm a big fan. I call it like the kind of the budget Blantons or the findable Blantons.
There you go. And then the next one I'm going to throw out to you, and this is not in Texas, but we're able to get it from a neighboring state. Thank you, Louisiana. This is Cooper's Craft. Again, going with the 100 proof. They have a lower proof one, but spend the extra $2 to $5 and get the 100 proof. You'll be happy that you did. Quality bourbon. Also, Brown Forman.
Yes. A huge fan of that one. And unfortunately, we just don't get it in Texas, but we can get it in Louisiana, and that's not that far from us. So if we're making a trip out there, as most people from Texas do, you go get yourself a bottle.
Yeah, really good stuff. You got a few more? You want me to keep rattling?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're getting to that $50+ range, right?
Not yet.
Oh no. Okay. Well, please go ahead.
I'm going to throw out Old Forester 100 proofer for about $25.
Oh, yeah, that one's not bad.
I'll throw the rye in there too for about $22.
Oh yeah. Rise. I'm spacing on that. Yeah. The definitely, absolutely.
I think very old Barton at $14 is a decent whiskey. 100 proof. It used to be bottled in bond. It's no longer bottled in bond, but it's still 100 proof. I think they call it like Special Reserve or something they call it now, but solid bourbon. I'm going to throw out.
Is that Heaven Hill? Does Heaven Hill make very old Barton?
I thought Barton made very old Barton.
I don't know. Did they? I'm going to find that out. I'm going to look that up as you're talking.
As you're talking, I'm going to throw out two flagship products, which are Maker's Mark 90 proofer. I think is still a solid bourbon on the shelf. Usually, I think that's about $25, the Maker's Mark 90 proof. And then Woodford Reserve. Yep. Woodford Reserve at 90.4 proof is a solid bourbon. You get it for $25, $30. Very, very good.
Yeah, no, that's pretty good. Very good. Very good stuff.
And then I'm going to finish up with the last one in that kind of price category is going to be the Russell's Reserve 10-year for like $33. I mean, not 10, the 10-year. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. That's not bad. You were right, by the way. Barton 1792 makes it.
Yeah, I thought that's who it was. I mean, kind of Barton.
It says it in the name, but I was thinking like, Heaven Hill is like right next door to 1792.
Well, you know, and
so, I mean, it's like,
but some of these brands change. You're exactly right. Some of these brands change and they keep the name, but it goes under a different mash bill. You're exactly right. But yeah,
I mean, there's been like 3 or 4 different distillers that did Old Fitzgerald.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, even old Granddad and you know, those used to be national distillers, and now they're part of Heaven Hill.
Now they're part of Jim Beam.
I mean, Jim Beam. Yeah. See, you get so confused.
Yeah. See, it gets so confusing, but yeah, no. I think you're hitting the nail on the head there. I'll actually say that gosh, for the Maker's Mark, just the regular stuff is actually not bad.
I agree.
Literally find it everywhere. I mean, for 90 proof, even though it's 90 proof, it's still not bad.
Now, here is something I do want to throw out, Carter. 1792, when you can find it. I'm not a fan of the small batch, and just because I'm not a fan doesn't mean you won't be. So I would say if you've never had it at $20-some a bottle, give it a shot. But I will say, if you find the full proof or the single barrel for $30-some, buy it all day long. I've never had a bad bottle of those offerings.
Yeah, I like the Bottle and Bond one as well. The yellow labeled one.
Yeah, Bottle and Bond and full proof. I know they have what do they have? A cask strength too, don't they?
The full proof is the cask strength.
Is that the cask? I thought there was a third one.
Yeah,
Bottle and Bond, full proof.
No, so they have small batch, single barrel, Bottle and Bond, and
single barrels. What I'm forgetting. Yeah.
And then they've got the special releases that they come out with, like the port wine finish and whatever, but those are like more rare.
Yeah. And some of them aren't hitters. Some of them are okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So some people like sweet wheat. Some people don't.
This is true. So now we can jump up. Let's get, these were all for the most part in that, $35 sub range. Now let's jump to that $40 to $60 range where you can still find on the shelf all the time quality bourbons. Let's go through some of these.
I mean, you got to go the Whiskey Row. I mean, to me, that's with Old Forester. That's one of those that
Two specifically. Yeah,
1910 and 1920. Actually, I tried the 18 whatever it is,
1897,
the Bond, and it.
Yeah,
and that one actually wasn't too bad. I liked it. I don't know if I like $50+ liked it, but like I liked it.
And that's the problem. You're going to spend that money. You're going to go that, or you're going to go 1910 or 1920. That's why I say I'm not saying it's a bad bourbon, but I'm going to spend my money on those two products for different reasons.
Yeah, for sure. So I like those. Some people think they're overpriced for being like 4-year bourbons or like whatever, like 4 to 6 year bourbons. To me, like, I mean, they do heat cycle their warehouses.
There you go. I was waiting for you to say it.
Keep that in mind. I know people will be like, oh, that's just such a bull, whatever thing. But no, that matters. That matters because like once you get cold enough, bourbon stops taking on any of the barrel at all.
Yep. I mean, it's like suntanning, right? You go sit in the heat, you're gonna get some effect. So that's basically what they're doing. They're suntanning the barrel.
They're suntanning the barrels. Yeah. I'd also say, to me, like Woodford Double Oak is one that kind of falls in that category.
Yep, I have it on my list.
Really like that. I'd say another one that. I don't know. Well, shoot. I named 3, so you go ahead. I'll save some. And
you mentioned
after you talk.
You mentioned Rare Breed earlier. It kind of falls into this category, but I'll also throw in Wild Turkey Kentucky Spirit 101. And some people might go, well, wait, you said Wild Turkey 101. Well, this is Wild Turkey Kentucky Spirit, still proofed at 101, but this is a lot more age on the whiskey that goes into these particular bottles. So I used to be, kind of what I just said. I'm not going to drink that. Why would I pay the extra money? And then at the recommendation of Dave Jennings, I bought one and went, holy shit, this is really freaking good and worth the extra money that you're paying to get this aged bourbon in here. So Wild Turkey.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I'd say that I agree with that. Are they single barrels, or are they just Kentucky Spirit's just something else?
I think it's
older whiskey.
Boy, that's a good question. I don't think it's single barrel, but if it is, that's a huge difference.
They do have picks. You can go out and do a pick of that of Kentucky Spirit. Correct. Which I would actually like to do someday. But yes, I will say this about it. I really like the old bottle better than the new bottle.
You like the old, the turkey feather fan kind of bottle?
Yeah, I like that bottle. I think it's very unique looking.
Yeah. It's funny that, it's like we the new one comes out and you think you like it. And then all of a sudden, after a while, you're like, nope, I like the other one better. Because I remember the old one when it was just kind of going off the shelf, where it was kind of getting phased out for these new bottles, and I liked the new bottle. And then you fast forward 4 years or so, and I'm like, I miss the old bottles, So
yeah,
I'm not quite sure what I mean by that, to be honest with you.
Yeah. But yeah, those Kentucky Spirits are really good. I'm trying to think of some. Okay. Since you're looking up something, should I say a few things?
Well, let me throw a couple more out while I'm looking, and I'll let you jump in. I'm going to throw out because I did Wild Turkey, Kentucky Spirit. I'm going to stay in Wild Turkey and do Russell's Reserve single barrel, and then I'm going to do the first mention of this distillery, Four Roses Small Batch Select.
Yep, I'm on board with that. And to dovetail off of that, I would say Four Roses single barrel as well.
Agree.
Go for those tier ones because everybody knows that the less water added.
it means what? It's going to taste better.
Tier one means... less water means, it's going to taste better, right?
Oh, that's right. That's right. It will taste better. That's right. By the way, Kentucky Spirit is a single barrel.
See, I knew. I thought that's what it was. So
yeah, so it's a single. It's not barrel proof, but it's single barreled down to 101. So yeah.
Okay. Cool. Really another one that I'd mentioned, speaking of the turkey, gobble gobble, is the Wild Turkey rare breed rye.
Agreed.
That's one that, man, we've blinded that thing multiple times, and I cannot believe it comes out the winner so much.
It really does. It is so good. Is it fair to throw this one in there? Because I don't see it as much here, but I know other people in other parts of the country that say it sits on the shelf. Pikesville rye.
Yeah. I don't see it here. I hardly ever see it here.
Well, I know a couple stores that have it all the time, but I don't see it, in all the stores.
Yeah, I just wonder if there's some distribution issues or something like that with that particular product. But yeah, I mean, I like it. It's really good. I like the proof point too.
Yeah, it's 100 proof, 110 proof. But a tip for you, just while we're talking, Twin Liquors, buddy, always has it, like $47 too.
Do they really?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Did you take advantage of their dollars, their dollar markup or whatever it is thing?
Didn't you see my picture I sent to you and Dave Scott?
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah. It looks like he took advantage of it.
Yeah, I went in and made a purchase. Pretty good deal.
A whole box full.
That's right.
Another
one I would throw out is Jim Beam single barrel. Have you ever had the Jim Beam single barrel?
I have, and I actually liked it quite a bit.
Yeah, I'm thinking...
there's a lot of people who do not like that product.
Oh, man, I think it's delicious. And again, it's around $40. I think it's fantastic. It's a sleeper for sure.
I mean, speaking of single barrels, you got to go George Dickel single barrel.
Yeah, I'll pass.
Yes.
I thought you were going to go where, and again, George Dickel's out there. Some people might like that profile. Give it a shot if you think you might. It's a Tennessee whiskey. It's got its own kind of, if you're old enough to remember the Flintstones vitamins, that's a profile so many people get off that whiskey, and I think it's accurate. I get it off there. Huh?
Yabba dabba do.
Yabba dabba do. I thought you were actually, before you went Dickel, I thought you were going to say Jack Daniel's single barrel proof.
Oh, yeah. Well, that one is on my list. So I will say it is not for the faint of heart. It is hot. It can a lot be of times, but it is good.
It might fall into that category of like Baker's that we talked about earlier, not always on the shelf, but you don't have to hunt for it. You go to enough stores just kind of stopping in to pick up something or whatever, you'll run into it. Or the same store that you shop at some point, they'll probably get a few in. It hits enough that I would put it on this list, that it's available.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, for sure. That one's definitely on my list. Let's see. Anything? I've covered most of the things.
I'm going Knob Creek 12-year and Knob Creek the 120 that you get for like $58, $57.
Oh yeah, that's pretty good too. Yeah. I like those. I do hate it. Does really just make me somewhat irritated that they now have the 12-year like just as a shelf product. Rather than being one of the picks.
Again, the market drove that.
I can't fault them for that, but it does burn just a hair.
Yeah, I totally agree. Totally agree.
Another product I feel like this distillery doesn't get enough love, and I'll say it's High West, and the double rye is really tasty. They have some picks that are like finished and that kind of stuff. And they're a lot of times they're really, really good, and you can find those fairly regularly. So I'd throw that in the mix.
I think that's a good one to throw in. And along that line of thinking. Well, you go ahead. I was just thinking of one and I just forgot it, Carter. So keep talking.
Oh shoot! Well, now you've completely caught me off guard. No,
I was just thinking of
like the.
Go ahead.
We were talking High West earlier and talking about the Midwinter's Knight's Dram, and yeah, I mean that is a great. Honestly, it's even for the $150, I'd probably buy it. You're just not going to see it. I mean, I'm sorry, guys. You're just not.
Here's what I was going to throw out there. Along the High West line, we don't get it in Texas, but I've had a few bottles picking them up from Kentucky and other places. One that's kind of made an impression on me that I think is pretty well distributed in most other areas. New Riff. They've got some ryes and some bourbons where I think they've done a good job.
I think that the age has gotten up on those a little bit more too, and so instead of getting all like 4-year product, you're getting something with a little bit more age on it now, and I do think that they are a solid distiller.
I do want to ask you your thoughts on this one that we haven't mentioned, and a lot of people might be going, hey, boys, you didn't even mention this, and they've got, 6 or 7 different products in their lineup, and that would be Bulleit. And there's the sigh. There's the sigh.
It's not that I hate it. It's just that I don't know that they have, like, I've tried some of their single barrels that are pretty good. I think I've got actually, I don't think it's their juice, obviously, but I do have one that's a pick that's like 12 years old. That is pretty good. But I mean, I'm just not there yet with it. If you're in Kentucky, go visit Stitzel Weller. I think that's pretty cool. It's a nice historic site.
Yeah, I've never gotten into the Bulleit product. I know a lot of people say they used to or still do sourced quite a bit from Four Roses.
I don't think they do anymore. Like, I think that's long gone.
That's long gone. They're making their own distillate now.
Yeah. Well, that's been they've released their own distillate in the past couple of years.
Okay.
For sure.
Okay. Yeah, that's just one people might be saying, hey, it's on the shelf. And a lot of people, I know it's behind a lot of bars. A lot of people use that 95.5 rye to make cocktails and stuff, and I'm sure it's fine for that. But the bourbons we're listing for you today, we're talking about you could pour this neat in a glass and enjoy this and not be disappointed at all.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, when you're talking 95.5 rye, I mean, you know what you're talking about right there, the MGP.
That's right,
all the way. But it's not bad in a cocktail. But I mean, if you want to talk about better value, in my humble opinion, Rittenhouse rye from Heaven Hill, far superior. Very inexpensive product too.
Yeah, Rittenhouse rye is fantastic, and there's another rye along that lines that's really good too. I'm trying to think of it right now. I'm saying this to see if it triggers your thought there. There's a few ryes in that $20 to $25, $30 category. Obviously, we mentioned Old Forester earlier, Rittenhouse.
Old Forester.
I'm not a fan of the Sazerac rye. I know a lot of people might go. It's available, but it's not something I'm a fan of. 90 proof. I need it to be 100 if I'm going to make it with cocktails and stuff.
Yeah, same.
Can't remember that other one. Darn it. But that's a pretty good list, Carter. I mean, that's a lot of bourbons that we just went through and talked about that for the most part are on the shelf all the time.
There is one that I'm thinking of now that I actually do enjoy kind of a bit, and that is the Russell's rye.
The Russell's rye, they
single
make
barrel.
Yeah, they make a 6-year for about $30, and then they make that single barrel for about $50. Both are fantastic. I mean, the 6 years 90 proof, and that single barrel is 110, just like the bourbon. Yeah, you're exactly right. Those are two that we shouldn't skip out on. Really good ryes.
Yeah. I do like those for sure. So
even Knob Creek, to that matter, makes a 100 proof rye that's really good.
Oh yeah. No, shoot, man, I always forget about that one. Knob Creek rye is really good.
Yeah.
I'm a big fan, and if you want to spend a little bit, their cast strength rye is really tasty.
Yeah,
I don't know if I think it's kind of an annual release or something that they've started in the past few years, but it's really good.
So they have two offerings. I know the 100 proofer's on the shelf all the time. They have another one that's 115 that I see pretty frequently. Is that on the shelf all the time at 115?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
That's the single barrel picks, I think, is the 115.
That I've seen it as a pick for sure, absolutely. But I've seen it also just as a standard offering at 115 proof.
Yeah, I think they have that. I haven't been hunting it as much, but I'll have to check it out next time I'm in the liquor store for sure.
But man, I think we've done the listeners a pretty good job today of going through some options of bourbons that should get more love than they currently do, that are absolutely underappreciated, because you don't see anybody. We're coming from the perspective of what we see in these bourbon communities. What we see people talking about as far as where you should spend your money. I will mention that there's one that I've never had, so it's not on my list, but Wade Woodard here in our community, and he's very well known in the bourbon community, nationally. One of his favorites is that Thomas Moore. And I've been meaning to pick up a 1.75 of that. He always brags about it. It's, 100 proof, 1.75. It's like $33. But he says that one's a fantastic. Have you ever had that?
I've not had it. I've also heard that like JTS Brown is pretty good if you can find it. I don't think we get it here. I
don't either. That's Heaven Hill.
Yeah, that's Heaven Hill as well. So I don't know. I've not really had that though.
Yeah, I haven't either. But I need to try that Thomas Moore, because I've heard him say, and I trust Wade's palate. He's big on the wild turkey. But just letting people know, if you're out in the store and you do see that one, we can absolutely mention it here, because we know somebody who's pretty credible, says that's pretty solid bourbon.
Yeah, so, for sure.
Anything else you want to throw out before we wind this down?
I think we've kind of hit on the high points. I'm sure if there's something we're missing, please send us a message and say, hey, how the hell did you guys forget this? God, I'm sure we've forgotten something.
Well, and there's probably some things that we haven't drunk or had, and so it may not be on our list. And that just kind of gets back to our point again. There's a lot out there, right? That's the point of this, is that there's a lot out there. The list we gave you is just examples of what we know, what we've had, what we enjoy, and we can absolutely say these are quality pours at a great value. And that's the point of the episode today, is to stop. If you're in if you're a tater and you're chasing and you're hunting, you don't need to, man. There's just so much good bourbon out there that you're still going to run into a bottle here and there. You're going to go to a Specs drop, wait in line 6 hours and get something. And then you're going to get those bottles.
Wait 6 hours and then walk out of the store with like 2 bottles that you're like kind of just ho-hum about.
So we're all taters to some degree. But yeah, the point today is that there's so much good bourbon. We still love bourbon. But we've just kind of, we've come down out of the clouds, Carter. We no longer think that you have to be up in the clouds with the bourbons that are just, air quotes here, highly coveted to enjoy a good bourbon. There's so much shelf product that is just absolutely fantastic.
Oh yeah, for sure. If you're like me and you don't have time to jump into, 6 liquor stores on the way home or something like that, just take our advice and, buy some of the stuff that's on the shelf.
Now, I will say something. People might be wondering or asking themselves, there's a lot of craft products that have popped up that are available all the time, that some people might be in love with. I'm just not one of them. So I'll just touch on the craft products. And it's not that they're bad products. For me, what you have to pay to get their product, and I get that a small distiller, their costs are a lot more, and it's reflected in their product and what you pay for it. I'm just not willing to part with my money to just do that when I don't see a huge return, a difference, that law of diminishing returns. It's not there on a craft product for me. So if you're wondering why I don't have any on my list today, that's why. I just think the big boys, the Jim Beams, the Jack Daniels, the Wild Turkeys, the Old Foresters, they knock it out of the park, and you're able to get great products at a great value.
Yep, I agree with you. If you want to venture into that craft world, just kind of do it at your own risk and know that you're going to be spending more money for probably product that's not aged as long. And just know that, if you want to support a product, great, do it, go for it. Take the chance. I mean, I'm not one here to tell you how to spend your money, but just kind of know that going in there.
Yeah, and some of the product, like I said, is really good. They make some good stuff. It's just sometimes it's, the floor there can be $70 to get into some of those bottles, and then the ceiling can be well over $100. And I'm just not, I'd rather spend my money, for me, a little more wisely in my thoughts,
Yep, I'm right there with you.
So that's our thoughts on craft. If you're wondering why we didn't mention, a lot of those that are popping up, and by popping up, I mean, nationally distributed. They're starting to be on the shelves everywhere. But again, can be a little bit overpriced for me.
Yep.
All right, buddy.
Exactly.
Fun conversation.
Yeah, man, for sure. And hopefully we drop some knowledge on you guys.
Well, I don't have enough knowledge. Boy, that's given us a lot of credit. I don't know that I have any of that, but sharing my thoughts.
Sharing our thoughts. Okay, yes.
Carter, fun as always, man. Thanks, everybody, for listening to this episode of Food, Wine, and Whiskey. And until our next episode, enjoy your next pour. Cheers, Carter.
Cheers.